So we're now live on YouTube. Hello, everyone. Amin Boujou. My name is Jay Simpson. I will be the moderator today for Fat Chat. I am also employed at Vines Art Festival, and we're so excited to show you what we have in store. Today with us, we have Sam, Athena, and Caleb, and we're going to let everyone introduce themselves. So we'll start with Sam.
We're going right into it. So Tansi everyone, Sam Kesan, Dawson Creek, Otinia Magamatha Misigedawak, Otinian, and Kananas Government Nawa, Musquia Meski, Igwa Sela Twitheski, Igwa Squamish Eski, and then Kananas Government Nawa. Yeah, so hi, I'm Sam. I'm a Cree Métis writer and poet. I'm originally from Treaty 8 territory in Northeast BC. But my family comes from La Crosse in northern Saskatchewan, currently living for the last 10 years now on unceded Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh territories. I'm super stoked for this panel. Thank you, Vines, for organizing it. Thank you, Jay, for organizing it and moderating, and I'm stoked.
And we'll go to Athena.
Hi, everybody. Again, thank you to Vines. Thank you to Jay. I'm super stoked to be here. I'm calling in from Burnaby, and in Burnaby, we acknowledge the traditional unceded territories of the Squamish and the Hunkaminam speaking peoples. Some things about me that may or may not be important. I use she, her pronouns. I am bi and queer. I'm fat. I'm Black. I am Afro-Caribbean. And I hope that there's an opportunity for you to learn a little bit more about me as we go on. And I'm super excited to be here. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you so much. And now Caleb.
Hi, everyone. My name is Caleb. I use they and them pronouns. I'm calling from Huichin, otherwise, which is the traditional territory of the Ohlone people, otherwise known as Bay Area, California. I'm an artist, poet, writer, performer, scholar, doing a PhD in performance studies at University of California, Berkeley. And yeah, I'm super, super stoked to be here with all these lovely people. And thank you so much for the invitation. This is kind of like very dreamy to be with so many people who I admire and follow on the internet. So thank you.
Thank you so much. So this conversation was born out of a thread that I saw that Samantha started on Twitter, not TikTok, over a year ago. And I was like, we need to start having these conversations and organizing and having these dialogues, not in just like a refined space where it's in a silo. And so I had asked my workplace Vines Art Festival to have these conversations specifically about, as an arts festival that takes place for free in parks, well, what bodies are we missing when we talk about performance art in public spaces? Is oftentimes we don't see fat bodies. And because of that, that comes from a place of the art practice where fat bodies are often so ignored and less consumed in gross ways. So I said, let's combine many facets here and have a great conversation. So that being said, some folks may be scared about the word fat. And I just want to say that in this case, and for myself, I use the word fat. I really like the word. It is something that feels comfortable for me. And I don't prescribe any negative connotations for it for myself at all. And this conversation isn't about body positivity, which has been sold to us, and it's a lie. We can all agree that. But I wanted to maybe ask what the relationship of the word fat means to each of you.
I can start. Fat is a word that I love now in terms of describing my body. I do find power in it in a way of a reclamation of the word, because it's a word I hid from for so long and would pretend didn't exist, even though I've been called fat my entire life. I've been fat my entire life. And so just, it was a word that if I heard, I instantly would just recoil and be like, that's not me. No, 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 no. I'm chubby. I'm plus size. I'm fluffy, gag a little bit. All these things, but I'm not fat. And then one day I just remember like reading when I was a teen, and it was the, I think, Fatchin community on LiveJournal, digging deep, dating myself on this, that I was like, oh wow, people are calling themselves fat and finding power in that. And I just remember like looking at myself and being like, you're fat, it's okay. And then just having to tell myself that over and over again until one day I was like, no, it is okay. Like, it's great, actually.
I can jump in. I think very similarly to what Samantha said. First of all, yes, shout out to LiveJournal and the LiveJournal community. Um, but yeah, like it's a reclamatory word for me in the same way that I identify as queer, right? And not everybody that like falls under the LGBT spectrum likes that word. And that was a very confusing experience when I went to like a queer studies meeting in college, and people were like, but do we have to use the word queer? And I was like, oh, this is clear, this is not space for me. But you know, in the same sort of vein as reclaiming slurs, I very much identify as fat. No, I'm not specifically identify as super fat, right? Like, I've never had the experience that some fat people share of self-identifying as fat and people being like, oh no, you're pretty. Like, nobody's ever tried to like not affirm that I'm fat. You know, so it's been something that I grew up being called, and then through sort of political education, came to embrace.
I guess it's my turn. Fat. Yeah, I feel the word has been really liberating for me, to be real honest, because it's like it helps when I think about myself as fat and I think about the people in my life that are fat and my fatty friends that I love. I just think that it's it's a shape and a size, and it's nice to be able to finally sort of fit myself into the realm of a variety of different shapes and sizes by saying that I'm fat. That's super important to me, and it's really helpful. Another thing too about fat is that now I think these days more, when I say fat, it's also a way that I can kind of name a particular experience that I have in the world, and the ways that I kind of acknowledge the ways that I'm impacted by a variety of things that impact fat people. So yeah, that's how I relate to it these days. Also, I forgot to mention, because I was feeling a little nervous earlier, that I have kids. So it's a fun experience sort of talking to my kids about fat and fatness. Today I saw a dog on the street, and the dog, I said, oh, that dog looks like it's like a lab or a corgi, but maybe it's just a chonky dog. I don't know. And my daughter was like, oh, you shouldn't talk about like animals that way. Like, don't say those kinds of things. I'm like, what? It's like, it's chunky, it's fat. It's just like mama's chunky too, and daddy's chunky, and we all chunky. And then she's like, hee, I'm chunky. She is chunky. It's like, hee. She's like, mama's chunky. I'm like, yeah, we all chunky. So it's also a source of joy and pleasure too.
Amazing, thank you. And I'm so appreciative of that, um, because it's obvious we put in work, right? We put in work that was difficult to do, especially because when we look at it uh, in regards to fatness in society, every 12 months it is attacked very violently, and continuously over the year, where fatness is very specifically targeted over and over and over again. And when we see, like, there is so much that is kept from us, um, where the world that we know now today was really built for skinny people. and that is tied to racism, transphobia, colonialism. There's so many circumstances. When was one of your first times realizing very specifically that something was not made for a fat person? Maybe I can go first to show an example. Is one of the biggest things was seatbelts. As I began to gain weight, I realized that the seatbelt wouldn't fit and it would constrict me. And so I began to have to like go through the seatbelt and then tuck it in, or even at times just plug the seatbelt in and have that risk of, something happens. But even when I could plug it in, I then realized that if anything were to happen, it would damage me because the way it cut across my abdomen, it's not built to keep me safe. And the same for airplanes. I always ask for one of those extenders because I'm like, I'm not going to cut myself in half. And that was when I realized that safety for fat people was non existent in many circumstances. And this is something that is so widely used by almost everyone. So I think maybe we'll start with Athena and then we'll just reverse so it's more natural for folks.
Yeah, I can't think of like a first time in particular, but I do want to talk about like sort of a very everyday experience that I had. I mean, not so everyday this year, but like, for example, going to a restaurant, and having to be really particular about seats and booths and things like that. And it's interesting because I think I really feel like it's not a real big ask to go out and sit down and have some food, but there's this whole process that I have to do, and I might not be able to fit, or I might like, and I'm sure that, I don't know about all of you, but there's always this, I feel like I have this thing where it's just like, maybe I can fit. And so then sometimes I'll try because I don't want to have to ask for another chair. So sometimes I'll try. And anyways, I think it's about like fitting into restaurant seats and booths is like the biggest, like not the biggest, but like a real common experience that I feel like I've been having for forever.
Yeah. First of all, yes to seatbelt booths. Yes to restaurant booths. Yes to seatbelts. I want to encourage every fat person to steal an extender next time you fly, which hopefully is not anytime soon. But just take it with you. You don't have to ask next time. I always fly the same airline so that it usually works on the seatbelts. But then I've had the experience where I'm on a different plane on the same airline and I have to ask for another one, and now I have two, and I'm just like, which seatbelt does this work? So just skill sharing here. Take your seatbelt extender off your next airplane ride. Um, and to the question, I think clothing is something it feels very obvious, but I've been reflecting a lot as I've been fat my entire life, but I've gotten fatter as I've gotten older. Um and I've had this experience, which I think is fairly common, of like looking back on a photo of yourself when you were younger, even if that was like 6 months ago, and just like seeing yourself differently than how you felt in the moment. And when I look back at pictures of myself from high school, I'm like, I was skinny, but I felt like the fucking fattest thing in the world. And I realized recently that so much of that was because I was always kind of on the cusp of clothing. Like, first of all, clothing was always hard to find. And then when I could find it, I was always on the cusp of like, I basically was only able to find pants at Old Navy growing up. And Old Navy stopped carrying their in-store sizing at size 44. I started high school at like a 40-inch waist, graduated to a 42-inch waist, and then eventually like surpassed the 44. But in that process, I remember just thinking like, well, clearly this is just like as fat, like I must be like the fattest thing in the world, because where else do I go when I, you know, size out of Old Navy? Like I didn't, I mean, now I know there are so many more options, but I didn't, as a young child growing up in suburban Texas without really internet access or savvy or money. Um, And yeah, I just think that clothing really shapes our own perceptions of our bodies as well, right? By the sizing and what sizing is available. And I'm always at the cusp of like sizing out. Even now, so many of the brands that I can shop for, like I'm kind of on the cusp of. So I think clothing really shapes the way we feel about our bodies and the ways that we see ourselves. Even though it's like a completely arbitrary, it's completely arbitrary.
Oh, I feel that. I think back to the question, the first time I realized that I was just built different, built bigger than a lot of the other kids, was the playground at elementary school and the slides. The first time you don't fit down a slide, you remember. It is the metal slides. Mm-mm. And I remember, yeah, being in elementary school trying to go down the slide and being like, oh, like my butt doesn't fit. Like I don't fit in the slide like the other kids. And then that just like graduating out into clothes and like not being able to access the same clothes. So I grew up in like a small rural town where we didn't have like a Walmart. So there, like the access to plus size clothes was basically non-existent. And so I wore a lot of hand-me-down from my mom, who is a fat woman. And I look back at those times and I'm like, oh, that was brutal. That was tough. And then just like having to navigate that throughout school, middle school, and high school, and just in small towns, small places, not having access to clothes, like less than we have now in the city, right? Which is already terrible. But
I think now that we're talking about clothes, I think that that's a great thing to talk about, um, especially in like access to clothes and fashion. Um, Growing up, I was in foster care, and my weight was a big part of my care, where I had different foster parents and social workers always talking about my weight. And it was a really difficult time, and there were fluctuations. And honestly, I'm like, I really should just sue them all for X, Y, and Z, maybe get some coin to buy some more clothes, because clothes as a fat person is expensive. All of the sustainable clothing options for fat people are in the hundreds of dollars, and none of that is financially accessible to anyone. Um, and I'm wearing a top from a fast fashion place, and it was the most affordable thing that I was able to get as a fat person ever. And it made me reflect on the fact that um, even the fashion industry is going to fat tax us. If it's going to cost an extra yard, it's going to be an extra amount of money. And so that was very difficult. As a kid in my last foster home, my foster dad used to go to the States to buy my clothes, because in Canada, plus size isn't a thing that you see anywhere. Um, so it was oftentimes the States at the time where I could get my clothes. And honestly, I hated the fact that my cis het white foster dad was buying me clothes, because it wasn't at all what I had wanted. So I often was not wearing what I had intended to. But on a different note, in clothes, like what is one of your favorite items of clothing? Because I also want to talk about fat joy, and we all have that one outfit that we absolutely love, and I would like to also know that. So, what are some of your navigations, tips, and tricks, and places that you shop also? Because we're going to share some resources also. We'll start with Sam.
starting with me. My favorite outfit. I feel like in the pandemic, I just live in pajamas because I don't leave my house and all my jobs are remote now. But I did in early pandemic buy this one bodysuit from Additional, rest in peace. I know. And it's like this like light pink bodysuit, and like the chest area is this like mesh with embroidered flowers, and oh, I love it. I love it. I don't know where it is right now. somewhere, but I love it. As far as my favorite places to shop, this is my struggle because I can't afford sustainable fashion. That is just not a possibility for me right now. Like I can't drop like $400 on a pair of jeans. I would love to, and we can have a whole conversation about that. And I think the moralization of purchasing is a situation. But for me, I love shopping H&M Plus because I love their basics. It's very, it's all basically black and white, I find. Like there's not a huge variation. ASOS, of course, but the duty is killer. It's brutal. I'm more in Additional. It was absorbed into Pennington's and it is not the same now. Yeah, I tried Fashion Nova Curve and it like the clothes for fast fashion, this was like the worst quality I've ever experienced. Like we lasted like a day and then they just like literally unraveled. Like my shorts unraveled on my body and I was like, oh, cool, thank you. But those are kind of like the main places I shop that I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, I shop a lot from Torrid. I get a lot of my bottoms, so to speak, from Torrid. This shirt is from Bonobos or Bonobos. It's I think a UK brand, weirdly, but they have clothes in my size. I got this shirt deeply on sale. And yeah, I think that's kind of I shop a lot through Etsy also, which is interesting because which then produces like interesting dynamic where people are always like complimenting or like I get complimented on my clothes a lot. And I'm like, thank you. And like I'm wearing this because I have no other options. Like there's like a weird like disconnect. I feel like when especially smaller people compliment my clothing and don't understand like the reasoning behind what I'm wearing, and how hard it was for me to find those clothes. And yeah, I just want to add to a couple of other things to the conversation in terms of fat taxing, as Jay mentioned, like fat people also get paid less. We get hired less and then we get paid less. So we are not we face economic burden for being fat and then we're charged more for clothes. And like the argument is that it's because there's like an increase, like you use more fabric. And my response to that is that if that were the case, then clothes would be priced on a scale starting from extra small to small based on how much fabric is needed, but it's not. So it's pretty clear that this is just like a penalty for falling outside of the imagined normative body. And then in terms of fast fashion, I don't like as a fat person, I hold on to my clothes like way longer than I need to just out of scarcity. I'm like, I don't know when the next time I'm going to find an item that even fits me is. So I have to hold on to this regardless of if I like it. It's what fits. So I think the conversation around fast fashion is so different for fat people because like I don't know fat people that are buying new outfits, like who are changing out their entire wardrobes every season. Like it's just not sustainable or reasonable for us. But that doesn't get like that's not a part of the fast fashion conversation. And then we're shamed for purchasing clothes from fast fashion retailers when we actually like, I mean, if they last, as Samantha noted though, that like sometimes they don't always like they're not always the best quality, but like I wear my clothes for like 3 or 4 years usually, like if I can. So I don't know, like I'm gonna buy it from ASOS and then I'm gonna wear it for 6 years, and like that's probably not having the same economic impact that um the other discourses around fast fashion are thinking.
Oh, I could say so much about clothes. Oh my gosh. Um, oh, and I love hearing both of you, Samantha and Caleb. One thing I'm thinking that that sort of was a realization I had fairly recently, was that I have a lot of clothing in my closet that's black. And people have kind of said to me, oh, well, that's like your aesthetic, right? That's your thing, right? And I realized it's like, no, actually, it's because that's what the options are, is that it's really hard to find cute, colorful, patterned, like, God forbid a pattern on clothes for fat people, like, not at all, not a chance. So like, I kind of am resentful of that. And I was kind of also going to say that, like, right now I'm also I'm going to say some of the places that I shop at, but I kind of am deeply resentful because I also have gotten fatter in the pandemic. And there's like right now, I fit into like maybe the topish size at like I can squeeze into like Old Navy plus and maybe like additional, but it's like, I know that that's right now, maybe not in 6 months from now. And I am deeply resentful of that. Usually I like to shop like the sale or the clearance sort of sections. I usually like to shop online because, I don't want to, I mean, who wants to get like hot and sweaty in the change room? And yeah, clothes are kind of a joke. And also even I think like for fat folks, like I want to say to folks that are listening that like clothes, all of our bodies are shaped so different that just because a piece of clothing is a certain size, it may or may not, like the size may be the right size for my body, but that item of clothing may not work for my body. Yeah, and that's sort of a thing too. So yeah, so sorry, I got all ranty there for a second. Yeah, so one of the things that I'm just going to say out there right now is that like all y'all's, when you shop, look at what the top size is. And if that top size is like a 22 or a 24 or something, y'all better be like saying that they should extend their lines. If you buy like a really cute like jumpsuit or something and you think you found something in a sustainable place or whatever, like freaking write in and say, when are you going to have your size like 5X, 6X, 7X? Because we're all, we're all out here. And I feel like size is something that can change at any sort of point in time. But rant off, the cutest and like my favorite thing that I'm wearing right now, I am so grateful because a friend of mine handed me some clothing and I took this out of the bag. And you know how it is, like for fat folks, when you take a thing out of the bag and you put it on, you don't know how it's going to be. It was perfect. It was some overalls from Universal Standard. They're just these black kind of twill overalls. They are so cute. They're so easy. They're like one item, you put on over whatever shirt. They've got some like fancy like buckles, some silvery buckles up here. So even like it looks good on Zoom. And so that's like my favorite article of clothing right now. Shout out to my friend who gave those to me. Yeah, and then I think also like I also shop sales section at Torrid. I'd say like Torrid, Old Navy, Pennington's. But seriously, because of the pandemic, I'm having a really hard time like shopping at the American places because like the duty is too much. So yeah.
Thank you. One place I have been shopping is Eloquii. It's in the States, but it does have Canadian prices and then ships through a center in Canada. So you don't pay duty. And it's a brand by Walmart and it is fast fashion, but it's trendy, it's cute. They have super fat models. They partner with super fat bodies. And that's something that's so important because sometimes I look at the Torrid models and I go to look and the model is 2X. And I'm like, that's not legitimate. I hate clothing swaps. You will never see me at a clothing swap ever. Back in the day when my friends used to ask me to go to the mall to go clothing shopping, I stopped because of how traumatic it was. And I think that was something that a lot of smaller folks don't realize is the trauma of going to the mall and then realizing nothing in the mall will fit you. And going to Metrotown, it was like, this is one of the biggest malls in like this area. And there is nothing in here for me, except for the food court, which, I will make myself, I will peruse. I will get myself a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And the one thing I have let myself do in not recently, but in the past few years is just throw out all food guilt. And I will enjoy the food because it feels good, it tastes good, and that's all that matters, is that joy. Um, but clothing swaps, no go. If you're hosting a clothing swap and you're inviting your fat friends, think about that. I would love to do a fat clothing swap, but again, plus size clothes, they just increase the pattern, and they go for the cheapest the fabrics, which is, black and white, no patterns, because it costs money to print and all that stuff. It's not great. Does anyone have any questions in the Q&A? We have a Q&A section for folks who want to jump in. But did any of the panelists have like something that popped in their head? Athena, I loved your rant. Don't feel at all about turning it off. Like, this is our space to turn it on all the way. So if anyone had anything you wanted to ask each other also would be gorgeous.
I did want to build on the rant. In the like that I just want to name that, like, the fact that there are no clothes at the mall that can fit fat people is by design. It's an exclusionary tactic. It's meant to normalize the thin body and erase the fat body. We are pushed onto we are like, so many brands won't carry their plus size lines in stores, which means that even if they have a brick and mortar store, we're still forced to shop online, which, as Athena pointed out, is preferable in many ways for a lot of us. It's so much more accessible. We don't have to face the burden of discrimination in the space of the mall or the store. We don't have to find parking and that kind of stuff, and find transportation and whatever. But when there's stories like Torrid, who is like the only place that I kind of know of or knew of at the time, last time I bought pants, I drove like 30 minutes out of my way to go to the closest Torrid to buy pants, and they didn't carry my size in store. And I'm like, what's the point of this? Like, if you're a fat store that only caters to small fats, like, what the fuck is the point? And yeah, it's by design to keep us out of the mall space and to keep the fat body out of the public imagination. But I do love the food court, and when I wasn't able to get my Torrid pants, I did go to Cinnabon and Auntie Anne's, because I wasn't gonna waste a trip. So that's all I wanted to add, is just the intention behind it, and the ways that it erases like the fat body as a public participant.
Can I add a little piece to that too? I just want to add about Torrid. Like, we just got our first Torrid here in Surrey, like about 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago, something like that. And apparently, like, when it opened, there was like a huge lineup, huge demand. I guess they figured out that like that was the place where there needed to be a Torrid. But by the time I got there, like maybe a month down the line, they did not even have like they didn't even have like their mid sizes. They just had the smallest sizes there. And like, I just want to sort of talk about like the impact of that. Like, and sort of just going with what sort of you said, Caleb, is like, okay, I'm taking a risk here. Like, I'm taking a risk and venturing out. I'm going to spend some money. I'm going to buy me some clothes. And I go to the fat bitch store. Thank you, Jay. Sorry, I'm using Jay's language here. The fat bitch store, to get me some clothes. And apparently I'm too fat for the fabric store. And so it's like, I might like never go out again. And it's just like, I just think about like how these things, it's not just like, Caleb, I'm just really like sort of going off what you said. It's not just about accessibility. It's like literally about exclusionary tactics to keep us in our homes.
I will just say, if you're gonna invite me to your clothing swap, at least have a good charcuterie board for just me. That's the only way I'll go to your clothing swap.
I agree 100%. And also, Athena brought up something very specific, and Samantha, you nodded to it, and Caleb, you spoke about it, is the erasure of fat bodies. There are no super financially accessible clothing stores that are Fat Plus in Vancouver. There's Blue Sky, but they're expensive, and they're a certain brand that isn't for everyone. It's a very niche market. There are no Fat Plus stores in Vancouver. The closest one is Burnaby, but it's not in a highly transit accessible location. It's not by a SkyTrain station. You have to take 2 buses to get there. The next one is in Coquitlam. And then is Surrey. Surrey is the next location, which is that one is a little bit more accessible via SkyTrain, but you have to take a SkyTrain and then a bus. And the fact that we have to take transportation that is fat phobic, that doesn't have proper seating and space for us, is another issue where we are pushed out of the city. Vancouver says no fatties. That is what Vancouver is saying by doing this. And I think that's a very similar situation. When I went to Los Angeles, I was looking up plus size stores and there were so few. And when I went thrifting with everyone, there was no plus size section. And I think this is such a big issue where our access to get the things that we need to put on our body to feel good when we go out is impossible. I went through the very same situation with Torrid, where I was so excited to go, and there was not a single thing in my size except for underwear. And you can't try that on. So to travel so far, it was honestly like a 50-minute drive. And to get there, and there was nothing there, was so devastating because that trip was made. I got to go to the Guildford Mall again, which was my childhood mall, which is very nostalgic, but they gentrified the shit out of it. But again, it's become such a chore to physically go to these stores and to try things on. Siobhan brought up a very brilliant thing in chat about the changing rooms, the dressing rooms. Is even in some of these plus size stores, the dressing rooms are not big enough. They don't have the supports. One of my favorite things about the Burnaby Penningtons is that they have bigger dressing rooms and their chairs are plus size and actually supporting. And that was the first time I had ever experienced that, where I was like, I do need to sit down instead of these little ledges that my cheek clenches on. And it's not even the whole butt. It's literally like half a cheek of half a butt on it. And I think there's so many levels and examples in society where when I go to movie theaters, I always am like, if I'm with a skinny friend, I'm like, I'm going to have to be half on your seat if the arm goes up, because that is the only way I'll be comfortable. Other ways, I have to literally like my hips sit like this, and then I'm uncomfortable. And then I'm in pain, and I'm like shaping my body in a way that's not accessible for folks. Literally 2 days ago, I broke a chair outside. I have chair breaker, right? I have broken 6 chairs in my life, and I have broken a set of stairs. I was walking up a set of stairs to a house, and it literally broke under my weight. So I was like, I'm gonna go for chair breaker. No, not just chair breaker. I'm stair breaker now, bitch. You know, install an elevator. This is the only way. But what are some representation of fat joy that you have seen around yourself? Because I think that's something that's also important. We can talk about how stressful it is to get clothing and stuff, but I think also some fat joy is so necessary. And so like TV, books, videos, memes, musicians, like what are some folks or some things that are bringing you joy in that sense?
I can jump in if that's okay. And first, I want to say congratulations, Jay, on breaking the chair. I think it's always really important to take out that shit that doesn't help support us. And honestly, a service to a future fatty who could have been hurt by that chair. So thank you for that. Um, and in terms of representations of fat joy, it's kind of like cheesy and embarrassing, and I don't want to bring it up, but I'm going to, or maybe not. Maybe it's not embarrassing, but um, that TV show Shrill on Hulu, the pool party scene. Um, like I'm a big TV person, um, and when she, and for those who don't know, like there's an episode where a main character is struggling with her body or whatever, like coming to terms with her size, goes to like a fat uh pool party, um and ends up like finding, like seeing a mirror representation of herself and just kind of finding joy. And watching that episode was so wild to me because like I was like, I never, like people talk about media representation all the time and I'm always like, yeah, whatever. And then when I saw that episode, I was like, oh, like this is what it feels like to feel represented. Like there was something about that moment where I was like, oh, interesting, because I was like, I've been to that fat pool party. Like I've been to the pool party with all the fatties, and we're all obviously, because like queer fat community is its own special unique thing. Um it's really beautiful and really brilliant, and historically has hosted, pool parties and clothing swaps and whatever. So that, like, when I think about representations of fat joy, that was like a huge one for me in terms of visual culture. um but personally, I think just like the freedom to eat whatever I want. Live I I just moved in with a friend who's a fat person, and I'm just like having the fucking time of my life. Like right before this, they were like, I just made these like cheesy bread, like little bites, and I made a few extra for you. And there's just like that constant sort of like sharing of really yummy food all the time. And it's just like the best to live with somebody who enjoys food and is unapologetic about it, and who's willing to share. And like as fat people, I feel like oftentimes there's so much anxiety around food and eating for eating's sake. um right, and like that's a morally neutral act, but it's really hard to find spaces that support that. So those are my feelings around fat joy.
I can go. I just want to sort of go off of that pool party episode one. I think there's there's like a piece of my journey where like my journey towards like being comfortable with being fat was kind of this point when I kind of realized a couple of things, like the privilege that I had in my particular size body, because I feel like there's always people that could be fatter than me. And I remember that I was in this time where it's like, I'm okay being fat, but as long as I look cute, as long as I like dress flattering, which I've kind of like eliminated that word, until I realized like, yeah, I might be able to pass kind of, but there's fatter people that can't. And so what exactly am I doing here? But there's still like pieces of this that are kind of in me. And I felt it because in that pool episode, they're like showing like underwater scenes of like the like wings and thighs and cellulite kind of like jiggling, and I was kind of like scandalized but also like exhilarated, because it's like I'm seeing this, like this is like my body, but I'm seeing it like on the actual screen. And I think like, yeah, it's like that erasure piece where it's kind of like it's really hard to kind of really even like understand and accept my own existence if I don't even see myself like anywhere out there. Um, so to sort of speak to more like fat joy, I'm gonna like add in like a little bit of rant and then a little bit of answering the question. Is like really like my kids, because I kind of am like, I'm gonna raise my kids right, and like they like jump on my tummy and they like shake it and they grab my fat and I'm like, yeah, mama's fat, and like I encourage them to like love my body and love their body, and their like parents are fat and some of their loved ones, my partner is like also fat. And so it's just like I really like I think a piece of joy for me is like just knowing like my kids are going to go forward into the world where like fatness is like it's one of a variety of different experiences that is no like better or worse just inherently. And that's like that brings me great joy. And also they're cute and they make me happy.
I think for me, so obviously, yeah, Shrill, that pool party scene, I bawled. Just because like in terms of like my own body journey, like I hadn't seen anything like that. And I hadn't like a swimsuit is still something I struggle with. Like, you know, like all these things that like internally I'm still working through. And I saw that scene and I was just like, oh, okay, now I'm weeping. Don't know why I'm crying. I'm gonna have to like think about this for a moment. But yeah, it was amazing. And I do love Shrill, even though there's some parts of it I'm like, but I do love it. And I mean, I am really just gonna dangle myself with this. So I'm a huge Gilmore Girls fan. Terribly fatphobic show, but I just clung to it because of Melissa McCarthy's character Suki. Because at the time she was one of the only fat characters I saw on TV that her characterization is minimal, but like it's not about her being fat, and she got to do all these things. You know, she is the fat best friend, but she also finds love, and it's like this cute relationship she's in. I'm like, she has this like good, or she has like this wonderful like relationship with all these people in the town, and like it was like in my head this utopia where I'm like, oh wow, like this is amazing. This is like the only fat character I see where this is happening, and like that brought me joy. It still brings me joy. I watch Gilmore Girls more than I will admit to the public. um, but it is like, yeah. And a thing like I'm grappling with, and I don't want to like bring down the fat joy time because it's so important. But a thing like I've been thinking through lately, and I've seen some fat folks on TikTok talking about, and I wish I could remember their handles. I can't, so I could properly acknowledge the conversation they started, is like a part of this experience, a part of living and loving in a fat body is also bringing up a lot of fat grief. And it's like not so much like grief in like, oh, I wish I was skinny. It's like grief and now like I'm understanding that living and like loving my body and accepting my body, I'm grieving a life, an easiness of existence that like I will never have. Like I won't get to be thin and what that brings. And honestly, this is compounded when you have intersecting marginalizations as well. Like you hold a lot of grief in not being able to access a privileged world in so many different ways, right? And so I'm thinking around this idea, and fatness is just like this combination of a constant love and joy that I find in my body and other fat people and the amazingness we bring and have, but also just like, oh, like now I'm working through this grief of like understanding and fully accepting what this means for fat liberation.
Thank you so much for naming that. I think it's so important that you say that. Also specifically in like that fat grief, in regards to traditionalism for me, who's a reconnecting ceremonial indigenous. I like growing up indigenous. I was very familiar with, but also like I can't go to sweat lodges. I don't fit. I can't physically make it into these spaces to participate in ceremony. Does that make me less traditional? Does that like make me less indigenous? Am I not taking it seriously because I physically cannot fit into the ceremony spaces? Am I not sacred because of that? Do I not honor my ancestors because I can't do that? And then also, in regards to like indigenous, like modern contemporary fashion, is I cannot buy any fucking clothes from indigenous designers. that much. Like Mobilize just introduced 6X, which is fantastic. They're slowly incorporating, but all of these land back sweaters that I'm seeing, I can't physically fit in all of these like trans queer sweaters that are like, you know, our ancestors were trans. Like I can't fit in, like there's so much that I want to be able to wear because my friends are wearing it, my kin is wearing it, and I can't. And I wear my own thing and I don't fit in aesthetically to what is being shown. And there's that mourning of community where you want to look like the people that you're in relationship with at times. And that's so much grief in that, because it's not something that you, for me, I'm like, oh, it's not active, but it is. It's very active. It's a very insidious. Um, and my own skinny, smaller friends. I'm not going to say skinny because some of them aren't skinny, but my so you think I'm skinny? That my smaller friends don't even realize, because when they think of me, they forget I'm fat on purpose, where they literally are like, oh, you're not fat. And I'm like, no, bitch, I'm fat. Like, I am super fat. Like, I am a thick, fat bitch. And you need to constantly be thinking of that when you think of me. I will not let my friends buy me clothes at all. I have literally been gifted clothes and then they beg that I put it on. And I eventually I just started putting it on and having literally just my arm up like that. I was like, do you like this? That'll be $200 for watching. So I really like the fact that you brought up fat grief, because there's so much that's keeping us from participating in everyday life. But also that's not where some of the only grief comes from. In the Caleb brought it up in regards to economic status, but also with medical access, where going to a doctor is not a great experience at all. Finding a clinic for some basic care is not a thing. I literally went to go get some blood work done this week for my hormones, which have nothing to do with fasting. And every single time I've done that, the nurses have asked if I have fasted. And if I haven't, they don't do the blood work. And it's that kind of very basic insidiousness and that question that it's like, that has nothing to do with my healthcare, but because I'm walking through the door fat, you want me to fast in order to give me care. And I think it's situations like that that folks don't even realize what it takes for us to get through the door. Through the door sometimes. The doors aren't wide enough sometimes. But for us to access care, it is very difficult. Another one of my experiences, which I haven't been I have been public about, but as a trans woman, I am not eligible for surgery. They will not give me surgery. Montreal doesn't give surgery due to BMI, which is a super fucked up thing. Vancouver won't give me surgery because they don't deem fatness as quality. And they said, even if we were to do it, the results would be too bad. And it's very blatant. They want the best results for their image, not for that, you know, as a new clinic that's starting up, they want what publicity, right? So if folks want to share, you by all means, you don't have to share, but if there's any examples or situations that folks may not think about that you feel like bringing up, because it shouldn't be us that's advocating for our own healthcare. Smaller folks should be aware of this, but if you don't want to bring anything up, I completely understand. We can then go to the Q&A portion.
I have some stuff to share. You touched on it, Jay, and I think I just want to sort of highlight it more, which is that I already face, like, to go to the doctor or to meet with a health professional, I do not know what I'm going to get. And they may provide care for me, or they may not. They might diagnose me fat. And I think like the real thing I'm going to say here is that the fact that I'm fat may or may not have anything to do with the health thing that I'm coming to the doctor with. It may or may not. And I think one of the things that like you often hear, like you know, a lot of like the folks that are like fat haters or fat antagonists is like, well, fat, like what are you trying to say, the fat is healthy? It doesn't matter. Bodies may or may not be healthy. Like it has nothing to do with that. But where it does come into that is like I think about the impact of me facing like weight stigma when I go to see health professionals. It means that I don't want to go. I mean, and I mean, all of us here are like have multiple identities. So I'm Black, I'm fat, I don't know what I'm gonna get. And some days I don't want to go into the to see a health provider and get judged or shamed or basically, you know, I'm going to say like gaslit, because literally they'll be saying like, no, 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 like you don't actually have a problem. Your problem is that you're fat. Which what we know and what the research shows can actually lead to like serious, you know, serious other health conditions or even like death. So that's what we face. Like when, you know, a health issue comes up and it's not so simple to just like go into the doctor and get it checked out. And I kind of carry that with me. And I think that it really impacts the way that I deal with myself in my day-to-day life in regards to my health. Because I don't always go and like get the things checked that I need to get checked. It's really hard for me to follow like a train of appointments. If it's like, see this specialist, then that specialist, then go here and then go there. That often stalls. So I think I just want to really make crystal clear how critical and how harmful the health system is towards like fat people, let alone fat people with intersectional identities.
Yeah, thank you both, Jay and Athena, for your share. I'm so sorry that you like are experiencing this and how like the added layers of violence given your identities, right? And like Jay, when you're talking about this, you know, the surgeon who wants like basically a model for their portfolio, but they don't see the opportunity that is here with a fat person, and they don't see that there's an opportunity for them to actually show their skill across a range of body sizes, and instead you're just denied the necessary care. um it's so unfortunate and so fucked up. And like what Athena is saying, like that's, you know, I'm um a reluctant academic, and um but I've read a lot of fucking literature about fat studies, and like this is like over and over, like this is the experience that fat people um delay going to the doctor because we know that that is going to be our experience, right? And then oftentimes our conditions um get worse and can lead to death, and then our death or whatever other health factor is blamed on our fatness. And I see it, my like I've had to um fight my care practitioners when they try to diagnose weight loss to um they've tried to diagnose weight loss to help with certain conditions, and I've had to be like, actually, like that's not healthy for me to think about my body in terms of if I need to lose weight, like how else can I manage this condition outside of thinking about weight loss? And like maybe weight loss will result from me following these other things, but like I can't it's not good for me. It's not good for my mental health and my the way I relate to my body to be concerned about my weight. And then, you know, and then I've like gone to one healthcare practitioner asking for medicine for a condition that my brother, who is not fat, also had and was able to easily access care. And then they were like, we don't want to get prescribe you any medication because that's always like a burden on the kidneys. Um, which like on the surface like seems somewhat legit, but then I went to have a physical, and the doctor like didn't touch me at all, didn't like engage with me, just like asked me a few questions, and then was like, well, do you want me to prescribe you weight loss drugs, because you know it's just better to not have weight on your body. And I was like, I was just denied a medication that I asked for because it's too hard on the kidneys, and you're trying to prescribe me I don't know what, just for the hell of it, without actually like engaging with what I like need and ask for. So these are just and then like I have so many privileges as like a male assigned person with male privilege, who, and then as a PhD student, like I see the authority that I'm given in those spaces that this status grants me, and still I have to fight. And with all my knowledge about like all the shit that I've read, and I can, go round and round and round with them, but like that's most fat people um don't have these experiences, don't have these identities, and aren't going to be listened to by their healthcare provider. And then yeah, and then we are murdered by the medical industrial complex. um that's a grief.
Thank you all for sharing. Like it's such an important topic, but it's such a hard topic to talk about because as we're all learning, like this is something that's impacted our health, our access to affirmations in our body. It's impacted like our life and death. And like I honestly sometimes question if doctors understand that we feel pain. Like I recently just went through a whole gallbladder situation, which navigating a gallbladder, like gallbladder disease when you're fat and native is just like a double header of doctors being all disgusting. But I went into the ER and I had she like the doctor didn't want to like give me a physical examination. Like I could tell she like didn't want to touch me. And I was like, I'm sorry you're disgusted, but like you literally have to make sure that my gallbladder isn't about to burst. Like and I like told her I'd already been diagnosed with gallbladder disease, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I saw my chart, and in it she said under like where it was like the problem or whatever, it just said excess adipose tissue, which like just means like medical talk for like the problem is she's fat. And like I was in 8 out of 10 pain, like puking in the ER room, like because I had gallstones. And she gave me no pain meds, like nothing, not a shot, nothing. Like I sat there for 8 hours in pain to go home and be like, cool, thank you. Thank you. That was wonderful. And like the thing is like these stories that we're sharing, I'm very open about my experiences with doctors and everything because like I want non-fat people, like I want thin people to know that like when we're navigating the medical system, like we have to advocate so hard for ourselves to make sure that we get the care that we deserve, that you get. Obviously, this is complex, like when you have intersecting identities, but like that you can get so easy. like you don't know like what it like. Again, obviously, I'm not speaking in nuance right now, but like, so I don't know the feeling of walking into a hospital or walking into a clinic and like knowing I'm going to get the care I want and deserve. Like when I was misdiagnosed with PCOS when I was 15, like I don't have PCOS, but my doctor didn't listen to me and was like, fat, yeah, PCOS. No, I actually don't. And that led to like a whole horrifying thing. And just like, if there's like a point I can hammer home is that like, yeah, talking about like so many things, like talking about clothes, talking about everything, but like when it comes to medical care, like this is a matter of our lives. Like this is so integral.
Thank you so much. It is so cruel, and it's horrific how by design it is. Where Kayla brought it up, where like doctors are less likely to touch fat patients. Like that's the truth of the situation. I honestly, it's like, you need to be able to touch my body. You need to be able to find like out what's going on. I can't do that. I need you to be able to do it, and it'll, it's life or death some often. Um, and I always hate how we are forced to look at all of these New Year resolution, whatever it's called. I've literally Twitter like blocked the word out of my head. I can't even see it now. I'm illiterate now. Um, where healthy, and it is like so insidious, that we like the ads are targeted at us. They know us. Like they're like, okay, who are the bitches that go on Torrid? Who are the ones that go on Eloquy? Who are the ones that use these sites and talk about this? We're going to target it the most there. And I'm like, you are barking up the wrong tree, because my ad filters, one, but then also my word filters. Like, I will not see it. So spend all your money you want, but it's not going to work for me. But also, that's something that a lot of smaller peers don't have to navigate. And I think one of the things is being mindful of your language around it, and how you talk about it, where some of my smaller friends will be talking about the gym or the runs they're going on and XYZ. And I'm like, I went for a walk this week to go get a donut, but I went for a walk this week. But I feel a level of shame sometimes when my peers talk about it, and it's not something that's always all the way mindful. We have a question. We have a question, y'all. How many times have I hosted things and been like, put your question in the Q&A, and there's no questions, and I have to just sit there awkwardly? Anonymous attendee asks, I wonder if you folks have had to navigate fatness with fatphobic families. I feel a lot of self-acceptance with my drastic weight gain, and generally day to day I feel good. But the potential of seeing my family again and knowing that they will comment fills me with anxiety and panic. So folks have it. I'm going to mute myself because I need to take care of something really quick, but I'm listening. Oh, yes, I can read the question again. I wonder if you folks have had to navigate fatness with fatphobic families. I feel a lot of self-acceptance with my drastic weight gain, and generally day to day I feel good. But the potential of seeing my family again and knowing they will comment fills me with anxiety and panic. Okay.
I think I can sort of speak to that a little bit. I just want to say that that's like, it's really difficult. And I feel like this is the realm of where micro and macroaggressions happen, where people always like in our society, it's kind of considered to be okay to talk about like health and fitness in this way and weight loss as though it is what everybody wants. So like a society upholds this model of this thin, fit, and I'm like air quoting everything, thin, fit body. And so I think that families often want to like, I feel like families, in the guise of trying to protect us, they also try to shape that thin, fit ideal. And um, all I can say, like for myself, there have been times with my family where I've just had to kind of set like firm boundaries, and that may look like just sort of telling them like I'm not willing to have conversations about my body, those kinds of things. But how can I put it? Like everybody, your family, your relationship with your family is your own relationship with your family. Different strategies work for different people. It may be like a broad conversation. It may be like, nope, I'm not going to. And if I hear X, Y, or Z, then I'm going to like leave or whatever it is, go to this space, step outside. It's, I think like just, there's lots of things that you could do, but also I just want to just recognize that it's challenging. Families are challenging. They do these things. Sometimes they think out of love, but it's really harmful and hurtful.
That's amazing. Thank you. I think also like for me, like I do have a lot of fat phobic family members. And they're often the same family members that are also fat. And a part of my coping in that is understanding that if they're being fat phobic to me or they're saying fat phobic things, like, this is their journey. It doesn't make it any less harmful to hear. It doesn't make it any less harder to hear, but it does help me contextualize that, okay, like, they're saying this about their body because of the pain they're feeling of being a fat person. And also, like, most of my fat family is also my Native family. And like, there's so many different intersections of internalized racism and fat phobia and class and like excessive, like, access to food. And like, there are so many things happening that I, as one person who has had immense privilege in being lighter skinned than my family, in getting an education, a university education, in being able to access these conversations that they don't have. And that is something I think about a lot when I'm in those spaces and I'm hearing these things where, like, I try and have those conversations with them when I can about how can we, maybe we don't say these words, mom, like, hey, can you not comment on my body like this? Like, I try and set those boundaries, but also like accepting them where they're at, and oftentimes removing myself from the situation. So if, everyone's in the kitchen and they're talking about food in ways that I'm like, oh, I'm about to spiral, go into the living room. Just like taking those spaces as much as I can when I'm in the moment, because every family is different, and how those boundaries look and how you can enact them and how you can keep yourself safe looks different, right? But I do try and just remember what I'm bringing into this, the ways that I have this access, and how that has impacted my journey into my self-acceptance, and learning to love my body, and the ways that like my family is still on their journey and how that's going to look different, and just accepting where they're at and just keeping yourself safe when you can.
Yeah, I'll kind of add on to what Athena and Samantha have already shared. I have the same experience of coming from a fat family and experiencing fat phobia from them. And it took me a really long time to understand that, like Sam was saying, that like that is kind of, they're placing their own discomfort with their bodies onto me, and that it actually like is not about me. And I love Athena's strategy of setting, sort of escalating boundaries depending on how depending on your relationship with your family, and how that's an extremely difficult task. I also want to make space for the fact that I don't talk to my parents. I haven't spoken to my parents in like almost 2 years for a variety of reasons. And sometimes our families are not good for us for whatever reason. And that's, it's really hard. It's really painful. But if your family, for whatever reason, becomes so detrimental to your mental health, that there's space for you to set a full boundary of just not communicating with them. I don't know if that's where you're at or like what the rest of the story is. Like, my story is very complicated, but and like fat phobia is only one part of it. But that's a perfectly valid option.
Thank you so much. Boundaries is what I'm hearing. I love boundaries. I'm gonna have a quick answer to that too. Is one of my foster sisters is a trainer, and she also did those like muscle competitions, and she was always commenting about my weight, and I was like always pissed off about it. And one winter, because we lived in a cabin, she and her muscle friends came over, And my dad, who at the time was a bigger guy, was like, let's have a firewood chopping competition between y'all to see who can chop more firewood. One, it was a trick so he could get firewood chopped. I see that now retroactively. But I chopped more wood than all three of them. I chopped 10 times the amount of wood. And I always look back at that because I'm like, that was a proving moment for me that my weight has nothing to do with my capacity or skill in this situation. And that her argument was always about my weight being a thing that would keep me from things and keep me from doing things and being able to do things in that sense. And because of that moment, I never accept any of those conversations because one, they don't have the experience. They don't know what I can and can't do most of the time, because whenever I visit them, it's like once every year to 2 years. They don't know me. They don't see me every single day. They don't see what I do. So it has nothing to do with that. And also, I particularly don't care. So some of these questions we're going to rush through because they have some answers. We've got 15 minutes, and I'm so grateful for the questions. So one of them is, any advice for dealing with health concern trolling? And I'm going to repeat the question again. Any advice for dealing with health concern trolling?
I'm gonna say if it's online, if it's like you post on Instagram or something, or like you're experiencing it on social media, my go-to is just don't engage. I get it on Twitter all the time. I get it, like, I just don't engage anymore. Because if it's trolling, like, just shitty people doing shitty things, nothing I'm going to say is going to change their mind about my body and my health. I'm not going to educate them for free. I'm not going to let them get a rise out of me. And like, a personal boundary I put up with health concern trolling is that I just don't engage with it. If it's like interpersonally with friends, we're going to have a conversation about why that wasn't okay. If it's a stranger, you don't exist to me. Like, I don't care about you. Which maybe I'm just avoidant, I don't know, but I will fight you.
Awesome. Did Athena or Caleb, did either of you want to?
I'll say yes. I'm super quick with the block button. If it's, I don't know, I've gotten frustrated with having conversations and people expecting me to prove my argument. And so my new go-to thing is, okay, show me a study that that supports your concerns, and specifically show me a study that is not funded by or carried out by somebody who has a connection to the weight loss industry. And I'm just kind of like, okay, you go off and do that, because like that's going to keep you occupied for a while and you're not going to find it. And then come back to me. And while you're doing that, I'm going to probably block you. But that would just be my response, is just like, okay, show me a study. Show me a study that is neutral and not actually just a smokescreen to fill somebody else's pockets.
Oh my God, that's so brilliant. Thank you, Caleb. I did engage with trolling on the event. Someone had sent a comment, and I just said it's folks like you are the reason why we're having these discussions also, and you're more than welcome to, I didn't say you're more than welcome to attend, but I did hit that block button quickly after sending the message, because I was like, let you read the comment, and then before you can even formulate a response, I'm going to block, because I'm petty like that. I enjoy that pettiness of that little quick little clap back. That's something I really enjoy. We have another question, and I don't think there are any stupid questions here. So I struggle with loving my body. How can you learn to love a double chin, flabby skin, and a chubby belly?
I'm going to jump in because I saw that question. I wanted to answer it. I'm going to tell a quick story. In the pandemic, I was staying home a lot. Like, I stayed home for a long time. And then one day, like not that long ago, I ventured out to the grocery store. And I I was like kind of shocked. I was like, whoa, like people are so small. Like, how do they walk around on those little legs? Like, how does it even hold them up? And I realized that because like I was looking at myself like 90% of the time, and my fat partner and my fat housemate, and when my kids are just like my like perception of what was normal became me. Like my body, like I didn't, my body wasn't chubby, it was just my body. So my suggestion is, and this is like the phrase is like diversify your feed. Start looking at like a lot of fat bodies. There's lots of amazing fat folks on Instagram. I'm like kind of like, I don't know the TikTok thing really, so I can't really help with that. But start like look at fat bodies in different ways. Like, I mean, I think like look at fat strong bodies, look at fat not strong bodies, look at fat disabled bodies, like whatever, just look at fat bodies, because really we have to retrain our brain to kind of see the ways that fatness is actually like a normal part of human existence, because it's erased. And like I would say to you, like if you didn't know what was fat and what was thin, would you have a problem with your body? It would just be your body, right? So that's what I'm gonna throw in there.
Um, I would I would add, I'm just curious about um the reasoning behind loving your body and what that means for you. Like what is your sort of end goal there? And just say that you don't have to love your body. It'd be really nice to. Bodies are really hard. They're really complicated. Especially I'm disabled. I deal with chronic pain. It's not always super easy to live in my body, right? And like I don't have. So I would just offer like I give you permission to not love your body if you can't. Loving your body doesn't mean you don't take care of it. It doesn't mean that it doesn't deserve like tenderness and affection, food, relaxation. You know, it doesn't deserve. Um, that's not what loving your body means. Like you can give your body what it needs without feeling like you love the aesthetics of it. Um, is one part of the question, and the other, my other, or one part of my answer, and the other part is to think about what your body does for you versus what it looks like. Kind of like what Athena was saying, you know, like our, and like even Jay, our bodies are really strong. They really hold us and support us. And like, you know, even when we're not thinking about it, they're like uh processing our food and drink and like sorting it out, usually, unless we have a condition or whatever, right? But there are these things that our bodies are doing for us to keep us alive and supported and awake. That's like temperature regulation, you know, stuff like that, that um is really lovely. And to think maybe about those things that your body is doing for you that are really valuable and supportive, rather than how your chin looks or something like that.
You can also name parts of your body. Like this is my chinneck. Like I have hated it for like my whole life, but like I fuck the beauty angles. I don't do that anymore. It's just like this is my face, and this is the face you get, and this is my chinneck. Hashtag.
And your belly shelf. I have a belly, like the shelf that you can stick your whatever handy dandy things. That's your belly shelf, you know? Um, yes, thank me. Sam, did you want to add anything to that?
Um, no, I think what Caleb and Athena said were just so beautiful and so perfect. And I'll just say that it's a journey. Like it's not, you don't arrive at loving yourself and you're done. Like you are a complex person with a complex body living a complex life. And what loving your body is for you, what that looks like, and how you get to a place where you're feeling good is going to differ day to day. Right. So like just be patient with yourself and be kind. Like don't push yourself to love your body because there's no end game.
I think that's so important. There's no end game. name things. You don't have to love your body to love yourself is a really big thing also, that like I started posting photos of my body on my social media. I used to only post from up here, and then I started just wearing bralettes a lot in public, and just like, I was like, I'm not gonna be scared to show my very alabaster tummy because it's seen no sun for over a decade. To now I'm gonna be like, I oftentimes am wearing mesh things. I'm like, you see my nipple? People pay for that. People have paid for that. Now you're getting a free show now. Um, I I started posting my body in outfits I loved, and even though it made me a little bit uncomfortable, um, I also was like, but I loved that, and that's enough for me. And it's not like, there are days where I'm very dysmorphic and have a very hard relationship on top of gender feels. Um, but then also there are days where my partner is like jiggling my tummy and being like, I love it so much, so that I'm just like, this is fat euphoric uh feelings that just feel so good. And there's so many levels. I think we're going to end with that because there's just so many questions that obviously we need a fat chat 2.0, because there are just so many questions and we just don't have all of the time for it. But I just want to thank all of you so much from the bottom of my very fat heart. And if there was any parting words you wanted to share with us.
Thank you. This was like, everybody, like, this was fantastic. Like, this was fat joy. Like, I loved it. It felt so great and empowering to have this conversation with everybody. And I love watching the chat. I wanted to engage, but I can't talk and type at the same time. And also, I think the last thing I want to share is that my own personal goal in my journey is that I'm going to have a fat arm summer where I'm wearing sleeveless things this summer. I'm going to do it. Like, my bingo wings are going to be flapping in the wind and I can't wait.
Oh, parting words. I don't want to say goodbye. Oh, I think just that this was really wonderful. I would love to have another fat chat. So same time next year, Jay, maybe in a park.
We'll fly Caleb out. We'll
Yeah, and no, just that it was great, and that I'm grateful to all of you that are here listening. For the fat folks, like, we see you, we are you. And for the folks that wanna help out, like, just start like opening your eyes and just start listening to what you hear around you, about health, like the myths about health and fitness and what's healthy, and how all of these things are kind of coded in, basically pushing like fat folks to the sidelines or to the margins. So just start opening your eyes is what I would ask, and listen.
Yeah, this was so fun. I'm so down for 2.0 in person. I have the seatbelt extender, so I'm ready to go whenever. Um, yeah, final words. I'm honestly like hungry, so I'm just thinking I didn't have a chance to eat the cheesy bites that my housemate made before this happened that I mentioned earlier. So that's on my mind, and I just hope everybody has really yummy food after this and lets yourself eat really yummy food, and you eat as much as you want or can, and find the joy and pleasure in giving your body what it needs and what it wants.
Thank you so much, everyone. We will book you a first class ticket because sizing accessibility. I always ask for first class because not because I'm a bougie bitch, but because I physically can fit in. I had one place try to buy me 2 tickets. They did, and it was horrific and horrifying. Don't do that. We ask for your needs to be met and get them met. But also, smaller folks, start doing the work for us. Ask your designer friends why they only go up to XL. Um, Everyone enjoy the night. Eat something yummy or enjoy some time. Have a good time. Thank you so much. I appreciate all of you so much, and we'll start talking about Fat Chat 2.0 because it's probably going to be a thing. It's going to be a thing. So I look forward to all of you. This video will remain on YouTube, so folks can return to it. If you want to send it to workplaces, that kind of thing. If your consultation business doesn't include fat consultants, hire us. Don't just share this video, hire us, pay us, employ us. Much love and have a great night. Thank you so much, folks.